iHeart Art is proudly brought to you by Art Shed Online. For art supplies of all kinds at great prices, visit Australia's #1 art supplier at artshedonline.com.au.
Hi, welcome to iHeart Art. I'm Madeleine Culp. I'm delighted to be your artist today. And joining me is this pen. It's a great 0.3 pen and this beautiful piece of paper and a vague outline to what I'm going to be drawing with you today, which is a striped pyjama squid. Now, some people say it's an abomination, but I think it's quite cute. It's not actually a squid. I don't know why marine biologists named it a squid. It's actually a cuttlefish. It's 5 centimeters big and it lives off the shores of Eastern Australia, particularly around Sydney in Watson's Bay. It's a beautiful, fashionable Eastern Sydney suburb resident. It is wearing striped pajamas all the time, comfort and style, which is why I like it so much. Also, it is possibly one of 2 poisonous cuttlefish in the world, which just makes it that more badass, I reckon. Anyway, I love the little guy, and I hope you will too by the end of it. I am using this pen, which is 0.3, but I might be using a thicker one as well, which is this 0.5. So if you're following along at home, get 2 variations in your thickness of pen. You can never have enough thick or thin pens, let me tell you. It's a little tip. And yeah, well, I guess we'll just get started. I work without a draft, so I just couldn't talk and draw all at the same time, so I started by doing a bit of the outline. So I would recommend that too. We get a nice little outline of the little fella. I've got the base of the back and a bit of the front coming out. He's basically kind of lurching forward, so his tentacles are kind of really cool and interesting. There's a lot of lovely lines in there. So I'm going to continue on just drawing a tentacle. So I'm just making sure it's got a really nice tip to the tentacle and then looping it back around. Now, tentacles are pretty tricky. I don't need to tell you that, I'm sure. But they're tricky because they've got 2 sides, and a lot of the time when they're photographed, they're kind of flicking up and down. So it's really hard to like capture that 2 dimensions. I give it as good of a go as I can. What I'm really going for is to capture the character of the cuttlefish, or striped pyjama squid. And a lot of the character comes from his eyes. They look kind of a little bit sleepy, but even though I'm not drawing a color, they're like orange in parts, so they're kind of creepy, but they're beautiful long almond shape, which is really fun to draw. So I am going to make sure that I really pronounce that almond shape and just get a little bit of detail around it to kind of make it pop a bit off the 2D page. So I'm going to just make it a bit thicker around parts and just make sure that that line is big and thick. And yeah, I mean, otherwise he doesn't really have anything else coming out around his eyes like a parrot would. It's just straight eyeball. And then I'm gonna start the stripes. So they're kind of bands. I guess we need to know where they're gonna stop. So behind the eye is kind of like a gill or something. It looks like a void. So I'm just gonna cut that into him. So I'm gonna do these long rectangles and color them in. So fun. I guess with the stripes, what you want to be doing is making the movement of the striped pyjama squid's body with the stripes. So you want it to kind of like flow with the lines you've already done. So I'm just going to do another one here. And they're pretty thick. and they're pretty even. There's some bits that are thicker than others, but it's good to keep in mind. And they do follow the body through. So I'm going to do a really long one here because, yeah, that's kind of how it goes. And I'm going to follow it through here. One time I was doing a market stall selling my art on various apparel, including a cushion, and I just made a couple of these little striped pajama squids on a pillowcase, and like, probably I don't need to tell you, they weren't the most popular thing at my market stall, but I did have this lady come, and she was so excited when she saw it. She was like, oh my gosh, what is that? And I was like, oh, it's striped pajama squid. It's 5 centimeters. It lives in Watson's Bay. And she bought it for her husband, who is a marine biologist. And then forgot about it. And then on Christmas Day messaged me and said, oh, he really likes it, but what is it again? I was like a bit intimidated. I'm like, he's actually studied animals, so I don't know if he's going to agree with my interpretation. But anyway, that's cool. I'm going to do a really thin one here because it seems to have a really thin one. It's really fun. I don't know, maybe I'm strange, but I find this really fun, coloring in these lines over and over, and just trying to kind of bring out the curves in the animal, because he's quite like bulbous at the back. No judgment there, obviously. And then kind of got this really fluid forward motion with the tentacles. So that's kind of cool to capture. And we just want to make sure that we're getting like the bump. There's a kind of a bump near his back. It's a bit of a hunchback. How I feel right now sitting here like this. Yeah, so I'm just gonna keep doing these lines. They're pretty long. And I just need to be aware that although you can't really see the other eye, I want to make inference that it's there. And so I want to make sure that that little cutaway bit, the little gilly bit on the other side is there, so I can kind of make sure that I reference that and it kind of divides the body. And then just kind of make sure that even though you can't see the eye, the lines that I'll eventually do will go around the eye to make it look like it is there. Well, I'm going to keep drawing these lines while we go to a short break, but do come back and we'll keep working on our striped pajama squid. Welcome back to I Heart Art on C31. I'm Madeleine. It's nice to be with you. I'm drawing a striped pajama squid, attempting to draw a striped pajama squid today. Before the break, we did some stripes, and now we're going to do some tentacles. Probably the most distinguishable thing about squids and cuttlefish. Now, this particular cuttlefish's tentacles, normally like octopus, they come quite high up, so you've got big lines, but these ones are really straight at the front and they're just quite little. So I've tried to capture a bit of the movement there in the outline, and now I'm gonna do some suckers. And for that, actually, before I get started, I'm gonna use a really small pen. I'm gonna use a 0.1 so I can get right in there. So I'm going to do little circles, just tiny little circles, and I'm going to increase the size as we go down the tentacle, as you would expect to see. Now with this one, it kind of like turns in on itself, so I'm just going to start dividing the tentacles into 2 lines. So I'll just go around here and go around here. Using a different pen also kind of gives you a different like tone to the piece. So now we've got the tentacle suckers outline. I'm gonna just kind of put these little tiny dots in them just to kind of give them a bit more dimension. And I never want to get this close to a cuttlefish or squid's tentacles, but I imagine this might be like what they look like. I have eaten calamari, but not for a long time. So it's really weird. Calamari does not, I know people go, oh, it's the tentacle. Is it the tentacle? I don't know. It doesn't look like a tentacle, does it? It's like circular. I'm sounding very smart here. So one side's done. Most of my other tentacles, you can't see the suckers, except one. So what I'm going to do is draw a line down this back, like a faint line, down this back tentacle to divide the front and the back. And then I'm going to repeat. I'm going to do the little tentacle suckers at the bottom, and then the bigger they go, I'm going to do 2 lines of suckers. So I'm just repeating, and it's really fun. I really like drawing squids and cuttlefish. One time I was flying from Sydney to Melbourne, and it was on New Year's Eve, but in the day, and it was like planes were delayed and everything as normal. So I was killing a lot of time by drawing, and I found this amazing photo of a squid, and I spent the whole day, the whole transition between Sydney and Melbourne, commute, some might say, it's a better word, just drawing it, and yeah, it had heaps of circles, and then I named it the festive squid. I'm gonna do the similar thing that I just did with that other back sucker, just because I like the way the suckers are looking, and I'm gonna draw another faint line to make this tentacle a bit fatter, and then I'm going to put some more suckers in. What a life, eh? More suckers. I was watching a few like Bob Ross episodes to prepare for this. And I loved how he was like, if you're painting along at home, and he goes so fast, it was like, oh, people were super talented. All right, so here we go. I'm getting close and just really enjoying drawing these. And it also makes the tentacles look a little bit like they're moving more than they were static. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to leave it there with those guys. And what I'm going to do now is the stripes. This is the crust of this animal. Where will I start? The tentacle. There are some bits on the tentacle that aren't very stripy, so I'm just going to fill them in as I see. And another thing that really helps me, it might help you, is if you go around everything you've drawn in a really dark outline. So yeah, I'll might just do a few more stripes and then go around in a dark outline and see how we go. A few more stripes. The tentacle stripes aren't very consistent, so I'm not too worried about them. It's like when we get into the body that they get really geometric. Now, while I just fill in these stripes a little bit more, we're going to go to a break, but you don't go anywhere, or go somewhere, but time it exactly to come back and join me here for I Heart Art on C31. Hi, welcome back to I Heart Art here on Channel 31. I'm Madeleine Culp. I am your artist for today. I do ink on paper and mostly Australian native animals and plants, and I'm doing one right now. Not on the land. It's a striped pyjama squid. It's actually a cuttlefish. Before the break, we did lines and we did tentacles. So I've managed to do a few more. And I'm just basically playing around with it till I can get the depth and dimensions right for the squid. So I'm just filling in lots of the stripes to make sure that his or her pajamas are pretty good. I don't know if just thinking of his or her with the striped pajama squid, they're mating. I read somewhere that the women meet with lots of men and then take their sperm politely in a pocket. They have a pocket for sperm. Imagine that. And then after a while, when they met with enough suitors, they decide which one will be fertilized. And then they just make it happen. And that's how baby pajama squids are born. And they're born like exact same dimensions as adults, but just miniature, which I just think is adorable. How cute is that? I know cuttlefish are so smart. The giant cuttlefish that have a huge breeding orgy in Tasmania once a year, they're so smart. They apparently, the big men, they fight each other up the top of the surface to try and, make sure their sperm gets to as many female cuttlefish as possible. While the smaller men camouflage themselves, so turn themselves into the same patterns as the female cuttlefish, and then they'll just swim by the fighting males, the big ones, and go down and give, again, politely, their sperm for the pocket of the female squid, and she takes it and says, thanks, see you later. And apparently the scientists have done a lot of research on which of the sperms get fertilized because the female chooses, and it's the little guys that camouflage that are smarter. So they really value brains over brawn. Is that brawn? Is that a thing? I don't know if that's a correct saying, but you know what I mean. It's really amazing. They're so smart. And most of the time, our interactions with them are in a budgie's cage, giving them a dried cuttlefish bone. I don't know if you'd bother with the striped pajama cuttlefish because it'd be too tiny. Your budgie'd be like, get that away from me. What do you think I am? I am just adding more and more stripes, varying the thickness because as, from nature, I don't have to have it identical. It looks more alive if it's not. I'm just trying to put some stripes in that give it a bit of an idea of the shape. Because unlike a lot of cuttlefish that have like a distinctive pattern around their widest, roundest bits on their back, like this one from the photos I've seen, I've not seen it in real life, unfortunately. I don't think it seems to have that. So I did make an artistic choice while you guys were on break, and the flip fin, I don't know. I decided to make it bigger and I filled it in with some lines just to make it a little bit different. That's what I find. I don't know when you draw, but when I draw, I just find I step back and I take a look and I think, that doesn't make sense, I'll do this, or that doesn't make sense, I'll do this. And then eventually you get to something that you think, well, yeah, that makes enough sense. Though, art is in the eye of the beholder. I am not good at common sayings. I've learnt doing this show. So I'm just, again, trying to get this stripes down the front to kind of tee up with the tentacles. Because I like to play with voids, so contrast, dark and light. But in a drawing like this, it can get a bit confusing. So you want to help the eye along by making the lines follow the major line that you're going with. And I also went around the outside to make sure it was quite thick. So just making my lines. And notice that some of the stripes on this squid kind of turn into fork patterns. It's a technical term. I think Picasso invented it. Fork patterns. You just want to keep playing with it, really. I don't know how most of my drawings will turn up. If I have a lot of abandoned drawings where I just, I don't know, they just don't work. Or I abandon drawings and then about 5 months later I come back to them and I'm like, oh, I understand now and I can make something work. I guess it's a process. But I just try and keep it fun as well. I like to have a lot of joy in my drawings because, yeah, I'm so interested by the animal that I'm normally drawing that I hope it kind of carries through. It's just so amazing how some of these animals live and what they look like. I don't know. I would like to learn to scuba dive just to see things like this. Maybe people wouldn't. They'd be terrified of this coming towards you, but it's so small, right? 5 centimeters. You'd be fine. Well, I'm getting pretty close, actually. I mean, I guess that's the eternal question for art, like, when is it done? Sometimes I feel like I know when it's done, and I'm like, that's a definite ending. And then other times I could play with it for months. Probably the longest drawing I ever did was A4 sea otter, and I liked it because it was doing a bit of a model behind the back look. It was so sassy, and that took me ages because I got into this pattern where I was just drawing every individual hair. I started and then I just thought, I can't stop. But anyway, that's another story, another interesting story. So I think we're about done. I mean, for now, I'll leave that. I might add to it tonight. I might think about it. But for now, I think that's pretty much done. And that's the Striped Pyjama Squid. 5 centimeters. It's so amazing. And yeah, that's all it is for now. But yeah, I've been Madeleine Culp, and this has been I Heart Art. And thank you so much for joining us here on Channel 31. So until next time, I'll see you later.
I Heart Art is proudly brought to you by Art Shed Online. For art supplies of all kinds at great prices, visit Australia's #1 art supplier at artshedonline.com.au.